So you're gonna see in the drawing that you're gonna have two, in the mitochondria, you have two membranes. Let me redraw that. You're gonna have two membranes in the mitochondria. And what we're gonna work with right here is a plant cell. In an animal cell over here, someone close the door. In an animal cell, you only have a mitochondria. Somebody's going to have to open it for the copies. So, in an animal cell, you only have mitochondria. Mitochondria. In a plant cell, you have mitochondria. And you have another organelle called a chloroplast. Both of them have two membranes. And you're gonna do in your pojo, you're gonna name them, you're gonna see what they do. And the whole big picture here is that you need to create a high and a low. You have these membranes, you have a bunch of membranes in these organelles, you have two membranes, and you're gonna create on one side, you're gonna create a high hydrogen ion, H+, very acidic. Very acidic on one side, high on this side, and low on this side. And if you create it, once you create that, what you're creating is a dam. You know what a dam is, correct? You have a dam, you dam up water, right? And then if you let the water flow, then you can turn a turbine. You've seen this before in elementary school, I think, if you paid attention. You can turn a mill, correct? The water falling in a waterfall, it can turn the wheel, and the wheel can make electricity. Is that clear? That's hydroelectric power. Is that clear? Yes or no, guys? I don't want anyone confused. So that's that. How do you do that? Well, you got high and then low, right? The energy's flowing down, and you turn mechanical energy, the water falling into this water wheel turning, which makes then electrical energy. Does that make sense? This is a waterfall. This is a cell membrane. Here we have high and low as well, but obviously water's not falling here. And if you have a special little enzyme called ATP synthetase, then as the hydrogens fall through, as hydrogen goes through, then that turns the protein, which then makes ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, and you can add a phosphate. ADP is that, remember the nucleotides, those little DNA monomers that we put together into that DNA molecule? Well, this is the A in ATGC, so this is the A. So ADP you put another one on, and that makes ATP. ATP is high energy. So now this is your dollars. This is what you want, because your body can use this, right? Your body can use this to make things happen. It's hard for your body to use ADP to make a lot of stuff happen, but ATP has a lot of energy. Where'd that energy come from? From the hydrogen ions moving. Does that make sense? So we create a concentration gradient. We make a high on this side and a low on that side. And of course, we know things are going to move from high to low on their own. And as they turn, ATP synthetase makes ATP. ATP is the dollar signs for your body. That's how if I asked you to work 8 hours a day, what would you expect to get? Money. If you're asking your body to work, you need money. What's the money that your body uses? ATP. Okay? So ATP is the whole point of this. Which one did we get? Did we get both of them or just photosynthesis?
There's like 8 more minutes on the other one. The cellular respiration.
All right, so cellular respiration is the other one. Thank you. So this is photosynthesis. This in both photosynthesis and in cellular respiration, you're going to use this process of high to low. The question is, how do we create a high? Because it's not going to last forever. What's going to end up happening as this keeps going through? What's going to happen to this positive and negative? The positives on the one side and the negatives. What's going to happen to this as it keeps flowing? It's going to be high. It's going to keep going, and then what? It'll be equal. There'll be equilibrium, right? And theoretically, they would keep going back and forth in the same number without. So there's no more high, right? No more low. So there's no more energy. So we need energy to do what? What do we need the energy to do? You know what we need energy for. If we have a membrane and we have just a couple over here and we have a lot, because a lot of them came back over here, what do we need to move these positives, these hydrogen ions, from this side to this side? What do you need? You need a protein. Excellent. You absolutely need a protein. It's correct. So you need some kind of protein. So here's your protein. All right? But how are you going to get them to move? You're going from, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. But why do you need ATP? Because you're going from high. Oh, I'm sorry. You're not going in this direction. My bad. I'm so used to drawing this in this way. You want to take the low and you want to keep pumping them into the high. You want to pump the low into the high. Why? So that you can keep this high. You want this to stay high so that you can keep making what? Keep making ATP, keep making that money. You want to keep making the money. You don't want to run out of money. So we need to keep pumping the low to high. Does that make sense? What do you need to go from low to high? ATP. Because that's active transport, isn't it? That's not passive. That's not diffusion. Diffusion is from high to low. That doesn't need any extra energy. Active transport's from low to high. So you need some kind of protein, is correct. And through that protein, and I hate that I drew it this way because we do want to go from low to high, but I should have. There you go. From low to high, you're going to need, in order for that to happen, you're going to need to go from ATP to ADP. Does that make sense? You need that protein to take that in. You need that energy to drive, to make this high. But wait a minute, if I'm making ATP and I'm using ATP to build it, then it's a zero, right? I'm not making any money. If I spend $10 to make $10, did I make any money? No, so I got to get energy from somebody. So in order to do this, I need energy. Well, in photosynthesis, where does the energy come from? Sunlight. So the energy when the energy hits a leaf, that solar energy hits a leaf, then in that leaf, in the chloroplast of that leaf is what you're going to be working on today, tomorrow, and Friday. You're going to look at this chloroplast, and you're going to see how this chloroplast, these are membranes I'm drawing here. They're not snowmen. They have special names. You'll learn them all. You're going to create some highs and lows, and you're going to have these pigments where they're going to use sunlight. Sunlight's going to come in, and what the chloroplasts are going to do is they're going to take CO2. Where's CO2 coming from? It's a gas. Where's it coming from? Where is CO2? Carbon dioxide. Where is it? It is the leaf. That's where it comes. It's coming from outside the leaf, which is what? Air. Air is made of, there's carbon dioxide in air. So if it's underwater, if the leaf's underwater, where's this carbon dioxide? In the water. There's carbon dioxide in the water. There's oxygen in the water. Fish don't breathe water. Fish don't just suck up water and use the water. They're getting the oxygen out of the water. There's air in the water. That's why you need bubblers and you need to have the water moving. Otherwise, they'll run out of oxygen and die. They'll suffocate. Fish can suffocate. They need water. They need oxygen. They need water to run over their gills to get the oxygen. But they're animals. All animals, the only thing we need is oxygen. We don't need carbon. We get rid of carbon dioxide. But plants can use carbon dioxide. They can mix it with water that they get from their roots. And then with a little bit of help from the sun, with light from the sun, you need light, and the more light, the better. The more water, assuming you have enough water, it has to be a lot of water, enough light. Too much light, obviously, is not good either, because it'll dry out. But carbon dioxide, water, light, then what you'll make is what? What do you think you're going to make? What do plants make?
Oxygen.
Oxygen is one thing, absolutely. They make a lot of oxygen. They use oxygen in their mitochondria, but they make so much, they get rid of a lot of it. But what else do they make? What do plants make for us? Well, they make it for themselves, but what do we steal from plants? What is that? Oh, see. Yeah, that's right. You know this. 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks and your brain just melts. What is that? It's glucose, sugar, C6H12O6. You drew it, you built it. Do you remember building them?
Yeah.
Little guy, glucose, fructose, ribose. They make sugars. So they make sugar and oxygen. Now, in your body, you do the opposite. Fish and all animals take oxygen and the sugar that we steal from plants or other animals, and we make water and carbon dioxide. Does that make sense? Okay. But that's cellular respiration. You'll have to work on that. I'll explain everything on Monday. What I need you to do over the next couple days is to work on those packets and do as much as you can. And read this. I'll assign it in Schoology, but in your ebook you have a chapter on cellular energy, photosynthesis and respiration. I think I might have assigned it already, but I will go make sure it's assigned to you. You know where to go look, or you could just look it up on the internet. Whatever you like, whatever works for you. You can also watch it on Amoeba Sisters, which I love the Amoeba Sisters, right? You can go and watch it on Khan Academy if you like Khan Academy. He explains it really well, but it takes, he's slow. He speaks slowly because I like it. I like people who speak slowly so I understand. But whatever you like, whatever works for your brain. Is that clear? So you're dealing with photosynthesis today and tomorrow, and the next day you'll do respiration, which is the mitochondria, doing the opposite. There's all kinds of little steps to it. You have to know all the details. You'll have to answer the questions, but memorization, you have to get to know them. Don't feel overwhelmed. We'll go over it together, but you just have to get the big ideas. Are we clear? So you're going to make a gas. What are you making? What are plants making? They're making what here? What are they making? Oxygen and what? And sugar. They're making oxygen and sugar. What are they using? Water and CO2, carbon dioxide. Using? Now, what do we use? Sugar, which a lot of us know because we love sugar. We love our candy. Come on, you do. And oxygen. And all of us love to breathe. So you have oxygen and you love sugar. I say that way because you got to remember this, and I see kids mixing this up all the time. I don't understand why, because you live this. You all know you need oxygen. And you produce, what do you get rid of? CO2 and water. You actually make water. When you eat a candy bar, you breathe out the candy bar. The CO2 is the candy bar. That was a Hershey's Kiss. That was a Snickers. That was a Subway sandwich. That smell was onions. Anyways, the CO2 you're breathing out is the sugar, is the carbon that was in the sugar. That's where it's a carbon cycle. Every time you breathe, the plants breathe in the carbon, take the carbon out of the air. What do animals do? Plants take carbon out of the air. What do animals do? Plants take in the carbon dioxide. They take it out of the air. What do animals do? Release it and put it back in the air. And so, here, Mr. Plant. Thanks, Mr. Plant. Here, Mr. Plant. It's a cycle. We, animals and plants, cycle back and forth these resources. That's why life on Earth is still here. Otherwise, we would have run out of oxygen millions of years ago. Correct? If we're all breathing in oxygen, where's it all coming from? It's the same oxygen that's always been here. By the way, where does this oxygen come from? It comes from water. It doesn't come from CO2. CO2 is all the CO2, this entire molecule is put into sugar. The water is broken up in the first step of photosynthesis, H2O. Please make sure you understand this because it's important. This is going to be part of your lab next week. You're going to take water and break it up. You're going to make oxygen and hydrogen gas. So you can take water, H2O, with a little bit of energy. We're going to use batteries, but plants use light, okay? With a little bit of light, plants can take water and break it up into H plus and plus oxygen gas. All right, so 2 water molecules, and it makes hydrogen ions. What do you need the hydrogen ions for? To make ATP. So the plants use the hydrogen ions, and ultimately you can use it to help make sugar. I have a bunch of hydrogen ions. Where'd you get the hydrogen ions from? Water. Where'd the oxygen come from? Water. When we do the opposite, where do you think we put the oxygen? When we take in sugar and oxygen, where does that oxygen go? When you breathe in oxygen, where does that oxygen go? I'll go back and let's go back to plants. When we're plant. So in plants, chloroplasts, you're taking they take water and they break it up using light into hydrogen ions and oxygen gas. So where'd the oxygen gas come from? It came from water. Do you see that? Yes or no? Okay. So when we breathe in oxygen, we're doing the opposite, right? This reaction goes in both ways. When we breathe in oxygen, where does that oxygen go? Just make a guess. You don't know. I haven't told you. I want you to guess. To make water. That's right. The oxygen gas, you use oxygen and you make water. So that's where the oxygen goes, but you don't really need the oxygen. You need the electrons from the oxygen. You need the oxygen to take the electrons so that you can make water and get them out of you, because you need to keep the electrons flowing. You need to keep making that ATP. One last thing about the hydrogen ion concentration. How do you get hydrogen? If I have a bunch of hydrogens on this side, H pluses, and I have a lot of pluses on this side, how do I get a bunch of pluses? How do I get a plus? Let's assume that I have these proteins here. The way we get this plus ion to move over here is we use these little tiny things called electrons. And this electron gets moved from one, gets passed along. It's passed along this chain. So that's why we call it an electron transport chain. Have you ever played that game Hot Potato? Well, very much like the game Hot Potato, the electron gets passed from one carrier to the next. There's a bunch of carriers you're going to learn about in the next few days. But it gets passed from one carrier to the next. And every time it gets passed, what do you think it's going to do to this hydrogen ion? Yeah, it's going to move it. It's going to attract. Opposites attract. So it attracts it and it gets trapped. Every time it gets passed, another hydrogen ion gets passed over, another hydrogen ion gets passed over, another hydrogen ion gets passed over. But wait a minute, Mr. Mendoza. We're going from low to high. Don't we need energy? Yes, Jimmy. We do need energy because this is active transport. You're absolutely right. Hydrogen ions, we're going from low to high. This side's low, Jimmy, and this side's high. So absolutely, you need extra energy to move them from low to high. You can't roll a ball uphill without energy. So for sure, you need energy. Where's that energy come from, Jimmy?
Who is Jimmy?
Well, Mr. Mendoza, I think it comes from the electrons. The electrons have energy. You're right, Jim. Absolutely right. The electrons have the energy. But Jim, where'd the electrons get that energy? I think they got them from sunlight, Mr. Mendoza. You're right, Jim. The sunlight, the sun's energy hits the leaf, and then the water and the electrons in the water get excited. They absorb the energy, the light energy. They get excited. They break off. Water breaks up into oxygen and hydrogen. The electrons get ripped off of hydrogen, and you get hydrogen ions. And then the ions get attracted to the other side, to low, from low to high. Now you got a concentration gradient. Now you got to as long as you have water, and light, you're gonna keep charging the battery. Oh, that's right, Mr. Mendoza. You did say that before, that a high on one side, low on the other is like a battery. That's right, Jimmo. Good job. You do remember. Hey, if I can't have a conversation with you, I'll have it with myself. So high on one side, low on the other. You're charging the battery. How do you charge a battery? Light. Use light and water, and chloroplast can take those electrons and attract the hydrogen ions through without using ATP. Why is that important? Because we need ATP for our work. We need to pay our workers, right? You got to pay your muscle. You got to pay your brain cells. You can't, none of your stuff is going to do the job without money. So you need to make ATP. You can't use ATP to make ATP because then you got nothing to give the workers. So you need energy. Where's that electron? The electron is where you're sucking up the energy and you're using that to pay your workers. So how do you make that energy? Well, remember, you have this membrane, and in that membrane, you have this little, well, it's not little, but this protein called ATP synthetase, and ATP synthetase as the hydrogen ions flow through, correct? As the hydrogen ions that are high over here, they'll naturally go from high to low. And as they go from high to low, what do you make? As you go from high to low, an ATP synthetase. Synthesizing means making. ATP synthetase means you take ADP and you make what? ATP. So you make a net gain of ATP, all because of those electrons, all because of that light. So that's the overall big picture of